All right, mate.
G'day, oops, sorry, mate.
Fuck. Let's talk over you while you're doing the intro. I can go on the bloopers file.
It's still going. All right,
We need a
let's
bloopers file.
We'll get the cut. 3, 2, 1. G'day, guys. Welcome back to the Supercoach Sword Play podcast. You're joined by me, Janet, and I'm joined by my good mate, Spills. Season 3, episode 14. Got a lot to discuss. Obviously, a notable absentee. No DR today. He's lost his voice. He must have been partying too hard on the weekend. Clearly hasn't recovered in time for our Tuesday night recording. Today we're going to discuss the big Josh Dunkley news. What to do with him? 1 to 2 week calf corky injury, which doesn't sound overly promising. We'll discuss that. We'll bring back a couple of our favorite segments. Shout out to those that watch the Fox Footy podcast. If you can have 2 favorite segments. And then, as always, we'll jump into the mailbag, dissect some of the questions and queries that you have put in there. But without further ado, I'll introduce Spills. How are you going, mate? Could you give us a rundown of your week and just Supercoach and in general, how's everything going?
Yeah, I'm good, Jonathan. How bloody unreal is it to see a projected score of 2,500 or 600 in your Supercoach app? I mean, it's just unreal. You get through the buys and you got a full set of premiums, but it's just come at a shocking time. We're not going to have a full set of premiums because it's going to cause all sorts of chaos, and this is what separates the men from the boys in Supercoach and what sort of cover you have on the bench. So really interesting to dive into this discussion. But yeah, going really well, and yeah, kudos to DR. Hope you're feeling better, mate. I don't know what's wrong with him, but yeah, it's pointless if you can't talk. We don't have DR this week, and we didn't have me last week. Obviously, haven't addressed that either. I left my laptop at work. I was absolutely livid with that. I realized about 10 minutes before the podcast, I went, "Where the bloody hell's my laptop?" I'm looking around for it. It hit me. I went, "Oh my god, it's at work in my locker." Oh, geez. So I was pretty flat with that. I listened to the podcast the following day at work, and I was and I love nothing more from you two blokes. So yeah, it was pretty good, mate. How was your week anyway? I know you're in the top 1% and just absolutely flying. Did a full set of premiums get you over the line?
Yes, mate. So I do have full premium. We discussed that last week. Scored 25.48, which, given my D4 to 6 combined for 210 points, so we'll definitely take that. Yeah, so inclusions of Tom Liberatore and also brought in Elijah Hewitt. They were good trade-ins into 1.4K now, so hopefully can get inside that top 1K in the coming weeks. But like you said, mate, 2 things. One, just seeing Supercoach projections of 2,600, it's such a blessing to see. But you just know that by Saturday, that thing's going to be going down. Like, yeah. You're talking about price are going down like Woolworths or something. Like, seriously, the Supercoach projections sometimes you just like, it's a pipe dream, but you rarely ever see them being met.
Man.
That's it. And I guess this is where the sort of we see that bit of separation comes down how good your cover is when covering Josh Dunkley. In my situation, I've got Seamus Mitchell, or a choice of Mitchell, Windhager, or Marriage to choose from to cover Dunkley
cover, man.
using DPP. So I reckon Mitchell's probably the pick of the lot there, especially if Impey doesn't play. What about yourself, Spills? How'd your week go in terms of your round score? And what are you sort of planning to do this round? We might as well just jump into talking about trades because I've got no trades planned for this week, but I know that you've got a special man close to your heart that might be coming in.
Yeah, well, you, myself, DR, and our lovely viewers will know exactly what my trade plans are. He didn't reply, Jonathan. I sent him a message saying, not saying that I was going to pick him, but just giving him a little bit of encouragement coming through to the weekend. And didn't he deliver? He scored a 106. Yeah, the man obviously is Callum Mills, 400K. And if you're willing to pay 600 plus for him, you're a very smart man. I'm definitely willing to pay 400 for him because that's an absolute steal. And having him just sitting tight there at M9 with a fully fit team is more than okay with me. So we're going to sideways trade Robertson in for him. We've banked 197K from last week to make this happen. Hence why I don't have to sideways trade Day or Sheasel for this one. So, yeah, look, I think it's fine. It should be solid cover. And, yeah, it's going to get me through this week with Sicily's absent. And then when Sicily comes back, we'll utilise that loophole with Mills and Day, which should be good. And, yeah, Dunkley's going to hurt me a little bit. I have only got Windhager to choose from. So hopefully he gets bulk mid-minutes and scores one of those mid-80 scores that we've seen a few times. But the floor's pretty low, and he can go anywhere from 40 to 60 as well, which is a worry. So hopefully get him on a good week. So we'll see what happens there. But I got scaled down a little bit, a bit flat with that result. So should have gone 2,550, two more than you, but I've actually gone 2,540, which is a top 4% score for the week. And I've gone up 9 rank jumps in a row.
Oh, green arrows. We take them.
Yeah, green arrows. I have not seen a red arrow since a week after Tuke's captain. I did a little stat on my Twitter, all the ranks that I've had and the 9 consecutive jumps, pushing for 10. But, yeah, we'll see how we go with 21 premiums on field. But, yeah, 4.8K overall, the highest I've been this year, obviously, and still must not be by much, but just sitting there in the top 3%. I reckon it's the tip top of the top 3%. I reckon I'm knocking on the 2% door. So hopefully next week we get there with 10 rank jumps in a row. But, yeah, not too bad, mate. And how good is it? Yeah, it's just unreal. The buys are over and we have a full side of premiums on field. So, yeah, we love nothing more, mate.
We do. We love that. And I guess something else which we love a little bit more is we're gonna present your final team spills. I'm very, very happy to say that this is a very good team. You've got a little bit of money in the bank for that final sort of injury trade there. Callum Mills, he's going to move into that M9 position once he returns. Well, I guess there's got a lot of DPP going on in this team. You're rolling with Big Kizza Brigos at R2, which we love to see you back there. Can you just give us give me in 2 sentences one thing you've really enjoyed about this season and one thing which you've regretted or hope you could go back now in time and say, I wish I didn't do that, except the Tuke Miller captaincy. Give us a little bit of a rundown of the season crash course.
Well, one thing I haven't liked at all that I have done is just getting cold feet with, a couple of those teams. For example, excuse me, Jordan Ridley. I was pretty quick to trade him out and beat a Bombers man. Not only a Bombers man, but he's my favourite player. Ironically, mate, his Guernsey's not up on the cupboard door as it has been in previous uploads, but that's not because I've lost faith in the Bombers or I'm salty. I just forgot about it. My Guernsey's still in my bag from the weekend. But having Ridley out of my team and then seeing what he's done in recent form, I know he only went 70 on the weekend, I'm pretty sure, mid-70s. But other than that, he's been superb. I could have just got him in or held him instead of Dawson. I'm pretty sure I can't remember what I did there. But just sort of jumping the gun on primos, or not really primos, even if they're fake primos, should be getting rid of rookies instead of those sort of fake primo types. I wish I held the faith and stuck fat. I'd probably have a much better team. So there are a few that have come good. DR touched on many of those last week, and something I reckon we've done really well. Well, he put me on the spot, mate, so I'm going to try and think of the best possible example. But I reckon the buy preparation I've done this year has set me up really nicely. And it's not often, I don't think I've ever gone through the buys without a red arrow. There's always something that goes wrong. There's always one buy round that hurts me the most, but I happen to go up in every single buy round, which is just unheard of for me. And I think a lot of that had to do with Rowan, Briggs and Gawn. Having the ability to have no donut at R2 has just been, such a critical move. So yes, Gawn was a failed pick, but he's definitely, in hindsight, a brilliant cover for that R2 position. So I'm happy to move him on, but that's definitely the best thing I reckon I've done this year. And just as a whole, coming back 9 weeks in a row, it's just been unreal. I was ranked 35K just about in round 7, and now we're knocking on the top 2%. Just about. We're not far off. So I think that would be the biggest achievement. But other than that, yeah, it's just it's gone pretty well. I think having 23 premiums should set me up nicely for the rest of the season.
That's brilliant, mate. Class is permanent. You got a big dog, James Sicily, just chilling there, waiting to come back into the team next week. And just to touch on your buy point, I think that's really important because in previous years I've sort of been like, oh, I'll cop a donut here, I'll cop a donut there. It won't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but really having 18 on your field in each of those 4 weeks, it really does add up. And you only see the benefit at the end of it rather than in round 10 when you're like, oh, I'll just trading Tom Liberatore or someone. And you're like, oh, I don't care about the round 15 buy. But when you come to round 15 and onwards, you just look back and you're like, that really was a smart move to make and just wait an extra couple of weeks to bring him in. But yeah, I'm super happy for you, mate. Hopefully to the end of the season, you don't see any red arrows and just green arrows from here. And go on a poor to Adelaide like win streak with your green arrows. I reckon that's the way to go about it.
Yeah, and they continue that win streak against my Bombers. Broke our hearts, but yeah, we'll see who can hold their streak the longest, mate. I hope I can. But what I am also not really surprised, or I'm genuinely staggered by this. But how have I managed to jump up in the rank with Sicily on the bench? It's just ridiculous. I thought maybe if I go down a couple of hundred each week, I'll hold my rank and then we'll charge home strong. We've been climbing every single week with the big sick dog at D7. It's just unheard of, really. So once we get Dunkley and Sicily back, I really hope we can come home strong and touch wood, maybe even make the top 1%. We'll see what happens, but anything can happen. We never know what sort of carnage hits us. One trade, not ideal, but 73K. So yeah, for example, if Noah Anderson or a Green gets injured for the rest of the season, I need to get to a 600K type player like your Butters or Liberatore, depending on break evens and prices. Yeah. But I think we've set ourselves up pretty nicely, and that trade will be banked for as long as I can. So any sort of short-term injury like Dunkley, I'm just going to hold off. Definitely not an advocate for trading, but we'll talk about that very soon, mate.
We shall. Well, I guess without further ado, I'll pass it over to DR. Oh, DR's not here. We'll pass it over to you, Spills. We'll pass it over to you, Spills, because I reckon you're going to give us a good old rendition of DR's rant for him. Now, this hasn't been passed by DR just yet. This hasn't been passed by him, but
oh no, he's gonna hate that.
On cue, can you give us your best rendition of one of DR's rants?
Gee, Jonathan, you bloody put me on the spot here because they're big shoes to fill. We know that, and DR watching on, he's gonna absolutely hate this. But I'm happy to sit in DR's chair for the week. It's kind of like when the teacher leaves the classroom. I'm teaching the class now. Like, so everyone can do whatever they want. Class party type situation. But Janeth, mate, off the top of my head, what would be a rant? That's something that really grinds me gears. I think it's an obvious one, but if it's so obvious, then why are the AFL doing it? It's AFL and Supercoach related, but the buyers, mate, piss them off altogether. I am absolutely sick of them. Every single year we have to deal with these stupid bloody buyers, and this is the first year I reckon we've ever had where we've had 4 on the trot. It is just unbelievable. Meanwhile, blokes are going to Bali. Blokes are coming back from their bye and getting absolutely creamed by teams. I think Port Adelaide were the only team to win off their bye against us. And you could argue Carlton, the case that
Carlton already did it.
Yeah, Carlton as well.
This was the week.
Kudos
the other 3 weeks, absolute carnage.
Exactly right. So I'm just not understanding. You listen to like Lloydie and all those blokes on 3AW. Yes, they're dinosaurs and they're probably a bit old school in the sense where you should be training all year round. But they go on holidays halfway through the year. Yes, it refreshes the brain, but then they come back and get smashed. And in a Supercoach sense, there's nothing worse than having a plan for the buyers. I'm more than happy to just have the week off altogether. All 18 teams just have a league bye, and then we put on like a Legends match or a bit of under 18s championships on TV. Something different in the AFL world to watch. And we can all just have a break from footy, come back after, let's just say there's a bye over round 12 or 13, and then you come back round 14, everyone's refreshed and we can get on with the season. No one Supercoach team is in bloody carnage states. You can just get through it. So, look, I don't know. There's no one that would be in the minority there other than the AFL board themselves. So I doubt it. But if any of them are watching, scrap it. I can't stand it, Janeth. Get rid of the buys so we can just live a happier football life. I don't know if you want to add on that, but yeah, I hate nothing more throughout the home and away season for both AFL and Supercoach purposes.
You touched on it perfectly, mate. Seriously. The only thing worse, I reckon, is if there was like one team on the bye every week. Remember when Gold Coast first came into the league,
a local footy
and there was a team Gold Coast had a bye in round 1, Brisbane had a bye in round 2. It's like, what the hell is happening? The season's barely begun. Why do you need a bye already? But it had to happen because there's an odd number of teams. Yeah. That's brutal.
That would be unreal. That's like local footy. One team has a bye round 1, the next team round 2, and then at some point in the season there's a league bye. Yep. So that would absolutely I could not imagine that.
That would
in
imagine
AFL,
imagine owning like Bont, English, Libba, Daniel, McRae, and then the Dogs are on the bye and you just get screwed.
Smashed. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, mate.
Yeah, I think you've done well for yourself there, Spills. With DR's round, he better be proud of you,
proud, mate.
for filling into the big boots there. But I reckon we're sort of gone back a bit in time here with a couple of our nostalgic segments. We're going to bring back the Supercoaches Who as well, and I'll kick us off here because I just want to give a big kudos to Supercoaches Who traded in Angus Sheldrick. Now, this guy, he is an absolute machine. He ranks 3rd in third quarter points since round 13. He's flown past even the most avid AFL watchers' eyes in terms of just how good of a play he is. He's now up to 316.5K. He's already made 150K, and his last 3 scores are 91, 93, and 102. That is ridiculous. His first 2 career games, he scored 11 and 9. This is not first and second. His second and third games in the AFL were 11 and 9. And this man has absolutely torn
it around.
He is an absolute jet. He is going to be so high on my radar for next year as a starting pick, especially if he's got DPP. He is going to, if he has a good preseason, he could really break out. It's going to be his 3rd year in the system as well. Can we just talk about the Swans? Like, what is with the Swans and absolute generating left foot weapons? Goulden, Blakey, Sheldrick.
Yeah, you look at like Goulden. He was. I don't know if you listen to many sort of off-field podcasts with AFL, Oz American Aces with Tom Green and Jake Riccardi. What a funny podcast that was. It was a piss. So they stitched Tom Green up, made him wear a suit. He didn't know what they were doing. Like, it was just he's the funniest bloke. But Green had a bit of a rant about the draft and how biased Victoria are. And he said that Errol Goulden was one of the he thought he was going to go in the top 5 in the draft. Just thought when I played against Errol, he was an absolute gun and just carved it up. And to see him go in the second round was like criminal. But no one actually knew who he was in the 2020 draft. I mean, and then you watch him in one we made his debut, you're like, who is this bloke? Probably one of the all-time biggest draft steals, and hasn't he showcased an amazing year? So that's just one of many examples where the Swans just continue to nail their draft.
They just nailed their draft picks. But it's Supercoach wise, if you picked Angus Sheldrick, you're laughing now because he's probably if we were to rank sort of cover players for Dunkley this week, I reckon Sheldrick is probably number one. I've got Mitchell. I know I'm happy, but I would much rather have Sheldrick just because of his role. He's an accumulator. If he plays a soft opponent, he's going to absolutely smash those teams out of the park. He's
great to watch.
Great player, great above head for smallish stature. The Swans have got a good player. Then hopefully we've got a Supercoach gun for years to come. Spills, your Supercoaches who? Where are we going?
Well, super coaches who staggered me by scoring more than 2,600 with lead captain. I avoided that with a flip of the coin. I didn't mention that, but I did a coin flip. I was going to go through with the lead, but I went, 50-50 here. Got Bont. Very fortunate. But I reckon about 4 or 5 people commented on my round review tweet on Twitter, obviously, saying that they went 2,600 with lead captain. That is unbelievable. That is nuts. I mean, he scored 84. How are you? You must have like the best team going around. I can't fathom that. I felt like I got everything right, and I couldn't even get 2,550. So yeah, massive kudos to anyone that did that. Just thought that was a bit of a cheeky shout out because yeah, that's an unheard of score, 2,600 with an 84 captain. Doesn't happen very often, Janeth.
Well, I'll tell you what, Spills. These 2,500 scores, they're being carried a lot by the forward line. There's so many good Uber premiums in our forward line, but we're going to talk about some Supercoach hot takes now. And I get the feeling that we're not going to see many of these options in our forward line come the season, the team picker in 2024. So my Supercoach hot take is not related to 2023, but 2024, Jack Macrae will be suited up as our F1 in our starting team come next year.
Yeah, I like
because
that.
If we think about it, Josh Dunkley's hasn't played a lick of forward this year. Tim
How are we
Taranto,
going to have the TPP?
same
not
deal.
One.
Connor Rosie, nah.
No.
Stephen Caniglio, nah.
No.
Darcy Cameron's a forward. Well, he's a ruckman, sorry. Errol Goulden's been playing wing. He hasn't even been playing forward.
He won't
so
even get it.
My starting forward line, all 6 of them are not going to have DPP next year. It's pretty funny. Jack Macrae and Sam Walsh may be the only 2. But then you come to think about it, it may be a little bit fun to just be able to pick some sort of rogue players like Nick Martin. Even Nick Martin hasn't played much forward, but Angus Sheldrick, if he's a forward, just picking random guys.
Sheldrick at F3.
Yeah, that you predict a breakout. That's exactly it, Spills. And then just having lots of spots open for sort of guys that get DPP in round 6, 12, 18, that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
But yeah, going to be really fascinating to see who the hell we end up getting.
It's going to be no one a pick. It's going to be absolutely bizarre. I think Nick Martin definitely gets it, but there won't be many other than that. It's going to really shake up the competition.
You reckon Martin hasn't he played wing though? Like he has.
Yeah, he has a lot of wing. Seeing forward a little bit. I think it mostly depends where you start as well. So. Yeah, I don't know if it's sustainable that forward DPP. You might be right there because same sort of case with Errol, just playing probably a bit too much wing. He'd be lucky to retain it, but it'd be good if he did.
Well, question for you, Spills. Let's say Taranto and Dunkley don't get DPP, and let's say they're about 630K to start next year.
I know you're going with this one.
In either of them?
I don't think so because
you don't think so. It's a pod move. It would be a big pod move to start with.
You'd want to bank the top 2. You'd want to go probably
Clary, Bont.
Even Clary. You'd want to go Bont. You'd probably be flirting with like Petrarca and Bont at M1, M2, having those real big dogs there, and then you sort of value. But yeah, I don't know because they've just come out of nowhere. You're paying top dollar for him.
Dunkley's been a proven performer. Honestly, if Dunkley's at 625K, he is such a pig. He's a super coach pig. He does everything: marks, tackles, contested possessions.
He's the best defensive player in the comp. Yeah. He's got the most smothers, I think.
He's a two-way player. He's a two-way player.
Yeah, two-way. Smothers, tackles, defensive pressure. Yeah, he's really good to watch. So it's going to be interesting.
That's really interesting. It's going to be a good shake-up because we're not going to be able to pencil in Dunkley into our forward lines every year, Taranto into our forward lines. It's going to be quite an interesting year to sort of figure things out. Maybe even Ben Hobbs, breakout, like third-year breakout. He could be a DPP as well. So good, fascinating stuff there. And your Supercoach hot takes, Bills, where are we going?
Oh, Shorty's going to love this one, but 20 trades are better than 36. Just makes things more interesting. It really, when you talk about that old chestnut, separate the men from the boys. This really does because, for example, Dunkley, if he's out for 2 or 3 weeks, I mean, even if you've got the trades, you're holding him. You're not gonna with 36. It's like, oh yeah, you may as well just be playing fantasy. I think it makes things really interesting, and it tests you to be patient, and it's a genuine marathon over a sprint type situation where the 36 trades, I mean, it's just unbelievable. I've got 23 premiums on field and I've been trading as aggressive as probably anyone I've seen on Twitter. So, yeah, I thought it'd be a bit of an interesting one to sort of discuss. But yeah, I love the old school traditional 20 trades. I don't know if we bring them back. The game's sort of changed, but it makes it's like anyone can win Supercoach. And if there's only 20 trades, the people like us that put in a lot of work into it will steer clear for those that just wing it and get burnt and don't have the trades to fix it. Where 36, it really, if you stuff up your starting team, it's easier just sideways.
And the thing,
so make the game more interesting, I reckon.
With 36 trades, I know so many people started risky picks. Like even DR, he started Nat Fife. With 20 trades, you're not starting Nat Fife. You know you're going to get burned by him straight away. And so with more trades, we're sort of inclined to take more risks on injury-prone guys. Whereas with 20 trades, you're like, the starting team becomes so important because it's so much harder to have flexibility and move around here or there. But really good point you raised there. We talked about it a while back when Shorty was on the podcast, I think just prior to Gather Round. But it's a revolving door discussion where I don't think you can appeal to everyone because the casual fans obviously want more trades. The more hardcore fans want less trades so that that it sort of favors them. But at the end of the day, I think that Supercoach HQ has been doing a good job overall in enhancing the game and its playability, its engagement heading into. We're past the buys now, and there's still so many people active on Twitter, which is great to see.
It is great.
Talking about being active on Twitter, I know a big discussion point circulating on Twitter is what in the hell are we going to do with Josh Dunkley? He's been found to have a corked calf, and he'll be missing 1 to 2 weeks, according to the most recent injury report released by AFL.com.au. Spills, we'll firstly start off with, I know we both mentioned that I've got Seamus Mitchell probably as cover, who, in the absence of James Sicily, has had two really good weeks. So he's scored a 98 and an 87 in his last 2 weeks without James Sicily. So I think he's in a pretty good position to sort of provide coverage. Then you've got Marcus Windhager, who again, without Seb Ross, who's injured, and Brad Hill, who did his knee. Not exactly sure how long Brad Hill will be out for. So you'd expect to see Windhager get a good run. Yep.
Yeah.
But if you're in the position of a coach who, for instance, let's say has 7 or more trades, would you potentially look at sideways in a Josh Dunkley to a Clayton Oliver, for instance, if you have a 7th forward and bring that other forward back, and then try to get Josh Dunkley back in because you just have the trades to do so? Do you think that's too risky? What's sort of the threshold you'd need to have to trade out Josh Dunkley in terms of trades? Because a corked calf, now, I'm not exactly a doctor, but a corked calf gives me 2 things. One, George Hewitt's injury last year before he did his back was also a corked calf that made him miss those last 4 weeks of the season. And also, corked calf sort of leads me to believe that there may be some internal bleeding there, which isn't fun. So
it's not fun.
With all that in mind, how many trades would you need to have to trade out Josh Dunkley? And if you were to trade him out, who would you trade him to?
Well, not only how many trades, but how many premiums. I mean, there's no point having 7 trades, but you've got 19 premiums. I mean, you got to get rid of your rookies. So if you have, let's just say, if you got a full set of premiums, 22, maybe 21 with Josh Dunkley on your bench, and you've got 7 trades, definitely trade him, I reckon. You can get away with it. Yeah, well, you got. Look at me, mate. I got 1, and I got 20. I got 23 premiums, which is great, but I've only got 1 trade. Bit of salary cap 2 to fall back on, so you could do a lot worse. You're in a great position, and it is quite a defensive move to just hold him. But I don't see why you couldn't do it if you had the trades too. But look, even if you did, I don't know, wouldn't you want to bank it? I know it's only short term, but yes, we saw what happened to Hewitt last year. He did me absolutely dirty, had no trades left for the rest of the season, was forced to field Burgoyne over him last month, and I still finished the top 1%, but it cost me a 3-digit rank, and I'm still having nightmares over that. So yeah, it's a tough one. It's easy for me to say because I can't trade him. I genuinely would be stuffed if I did. So I just got to hold him and back me man Windy for cover and see what happens. But yeah, it's very team dependent. It just depends what you have, how many trades and what sort of premiums you got, whether you got 20 on field or it's a tough one. But I'm definitely in the hold advocate. And it brings me back to my previous point why 20 trades is so much better. 20 trades, Janif, we're not even having this conversation.
That's it. That's exactly it, mate. Well, I guess we don't have we've been blessed with the trades. Who would you be trading Dunkley to? I think there's two real sort of options. One is a direct like-for-like swap in the forward line to Zach Butters, or you could go to a Jack Macrae. Even Jack Macrae's centre bounces went through the roof on the weekend. That Bulldogs midfield is so hard to gauge what is happening because Macrae had 0% CBAs against North in round 14 pre-bye, and then he had 65% just last week. And then Caleb Daniel went from 41% against North in round 14 pre-bye to 0% on the weekend. So it is Bevo's absolutely switching the magnets around.
He's a madman.
In terms of role security, I think Zach Butters is the one. But then again, it's such a sideways move. If Dunkley is just to miss 2 weeks, you might as well have just traded cover for him, which is where, given Dunkley's, I think he's 700k, 686k, you can bring him down to Clayton Oliver and still save 28k. Think about that. How many times are you saying, I can trade to Clayton Oliver and gains 28k out of that trade? That's pretty ridiculous to think about.
It's if you have him in the midfield, 100%. But if you've got him in the forward line, you don't really have any mid-forward premiums in the midfield. It can be quite difficult. That's my case. So
that's it. Yeah.
I'd almost be tempted. Could be mad here, but bank the money, actually saving 150k, and jumping on Ben Keys short term and forward line.
No,
I know, but he's so.
Ben Keys.
I know, but he's got mid-forward DPPs, cheap as chips.
He had 3% CBAs on the weekend and he played more.
I know, it's rigged and he still scored unbelievably. So, it's a funny one.
Not be... Okay, you're not trading Josh Dunk for Ben Keys unless we knew Dunkley was out for 4 weeks. Like, that is... Even then, I would be trading... You can't be messing around with your team, I reckon. Because what's going to happen but Ben Keys, right... He's 500k. It's not like he's 380k anymore. Like, it's not like you're splitting Dunkley into two premiums. You're taking down to premium. What are you going to spend the 150k on? You're going to hold it and just wait till Dunkley comes back and trade him back in again?
Yeah, possibly. It's a bit of a pottish move. Like, if you're thinking in terms of a stock market sense where you just bank the money, like, sort of. Or you could go the same sort of thing with Mills, which is like, but at the same time, if you got that much money, you're banking 200k. I mean, he's going to make money, and then you can sideways trade probably, I don't know, like Day back to Dunkley and still have money to spend. It's a left field option, but it is. There's no real.
It is a real odd move.
It sounds absurd. Like it's definitely a piss take talking about it. But there's more. It seems like there's more value in that than just a direct sideways trade to Butters. Because, what's to say that? How are you going to get? What I'm trying to say is, who's going out for Dunkley when you're trying to get Dunkley back in your team? Yeah. At least if you jump on a bit of value, like a Mills type, you can bank the money and then turn Sheasel or Dave for a bit of DPP to Dunkley without having to sideways trade anyone that's over 600k that you don't really want to, because there's no real point doing that. Bit of an absurdish type call, but I think
it's not the worst call, Matt. It's the only issue for me. Well, the main issue for me is just that Keys' CBAs, his scoring is so dependent on his CBAs. Like
Yeah.
we had a chat about this. He didn't turn up before he moved into the midfield against Brisbane and scored that 102. He turned up once all year. And then obviously, yes, he did turn up against North, but almost said
It's
like
North.
anyone half decent turns up against North. So
He's
it
probably
is
more
very
of just
interesting.
he was more of an example, someone I haven't really paid much attention to, but just that handy DPP. But in the same sort of case, like Mills for sure. I mean, he's capable of hitting the ton of what we saw and 400k. I mean, you could 44 break even.
Now that's something to consider. There's yes, you're making 285k, and that's big because that's money you can use to bring back in Dunkley.
Exactly.
At the same time, though, you can't trade Mills. I guess you can trade Mills back out again, but that sort of defeats the purpose of bringing him back, bring him in, because you're banking on him
grab for
being
you.
a good scorer. Quick cash to grab. You'd really need to have the trades there. And I think
that's the thing. If you had 7 trades, you'd be able to do it. But hypothetically, any less, I'd just hold Dunkley and take whatever cover. If you got good cover, then if you got Windhager or Mitchell or better yet, Sheldrick, I wouldn't even trade him. I'd just, if you can, hold him, hold Dunkley. Don't trade Dunkley. But if you got the trades and it's a real luxury, then yeah, go for it. But he's so highly owned that trading him out is risky on both ends because he's a bad antipod to have, and it's not like you're going to get hurt holding him because I guarantee you probably 50% of the comp will hold. If not more. So
more. Well,
way more.
I'll just give you some data, mate. So in the top 10%, Dunkley is owned by 98.8%. In the top 5%, Dunkley is owned by 98.9%. And the top 1%, he is owned by 98.5%. Every team has him, which is why at the start of the podcast, we were talking about how it's going to be like the survival of the fittest. Whoever has the fittest bench cover is going to survive Dunkley's absence the most, just because everyone in the top 10% basically has him. But that was a really good discussion there, mate. Really insightful to see what your thoughts are. And clearly you really see Ben Keays as a really good Supercoach prospect, because I don't know many people that would really be saying trade Josh Dunkley to Ben Keays, bank the cash and go from there.
It's definitely like I just thought of it. Yeah, it just come off like just something I thought of on the spot. Not necessarily would do it, but it's food for thought. Before we move on, so just to rank cover. So Sheldrick's probably top tier.
Yeah.
Windhager, Robertson.
I'd say Mitchell above both.
Mitchell above both. But that sort of tier.
Sheldrick, Mitchell, Windhager, Robertson above Windhager. Just the matchup, no Dunkley. Matchup, no Dunkley at the Gab. It's almost like perfect for Robertson to have a good game as cover. Windhager, and then I've seen a lot of teams have Marich. Now, know that he scored well, but he was a late in. If he gets matched up on Harris Andrews, Jack Payne type, it may be very difficult for him.
They're going to give him a bath.
They're going to give him a bath, like Jack Buller got a bath against Harris Andrews in his debut game. So
didn't he ever?
I mean, it may be a poor bugger playing up on the Gabba against one of those big boys. But yeah, so you reckon that's pretty fair summation of the 5 main sort of cover picks that people have? Yeah,
and also Fogarty and who's the other one? Cunningham. So they're probably ones you can bring in as well with DPP as well, which is nice and handy. I think like those 4 that we mentioned are pretty stock standard and extra points if you have Sheldrick and Mitchell even. But yeah, if you got one of those as cover, I think you could do a hell of a lot worse, which goes back onto what we were saying before. Just hold Dunkley, I reckon, regardless of your trades. It's just whatever. He's a terrible antipod to have, especially when he comes back.
Yeah, well, that's a good point there, Spills. I guess just very briefly, whilst we're on that topic, Lachlan Fogarty is 160. Sorry, let me just bring it up. I had it up before. Rocky Fogarty is a Carlton forward, 167.4k mid forward. He scored 90 odd against Hawthorn. 99. He's got he's a high half forward. He's playing the role of if Carlton, if you guys don't watch Carlton games, playing as sort of a high half forward that floats up to the front of stoppage as sort of a linking player between our forward line and the midfield. He's got a good role, and he's definitely best 22 in my opinion, just because since him and Cunningham come into the team, we won both of our games by 10 goals. Now, yes, they were against Gold Coast and Hawthorn, both at the MCG, but still, they both provide something which we were lacking, especially with some of the disappointing form of Jesse Motlop, Corey Durden, when they were both in the team. Sack Fisher, they weren't really doing much in terms of forward pressure. But I think if you want security and you're looking for a player that you know should play every game from here on in, that's Lockie Fogarty. But if you're looking for more of an upside pick, David Cunningham at 163k. He's got one N. If you guys were to search for him, 163.8k. He's very highly touted in Carlton circles. Drafted in 2015, but he's just had an injury-ravaged career so far.
Oh, he's been so injury prone, hasn't he?
He couldn't put games together. So when he played in 2021. He put together 67, 78, and 93 before getting injured again. So we really do rate him. And if you guys were to watch that Hawthorn game on the weekend, he was probably best on ground in the first half. He was everywhere. He was on 60-odd Supercoach points, had a couple of goals himself, set up a couple of goals. So I think he's one of those players where if you're looking for like upside this week as cover, he's your man. They both got good job security, don't get me wrong, but I just can trust Lockie Fogarty that he should play every game of the year from here on out if he doesn't get injured, just because the lower risk of injury with him compared to a Cunningham type. Spills, you're happy with that?
Yeah, they both seem basically splitting hairs for me. Very similar price, similar sort of ceiling, role, etc. Gee, Cunningham, he's been around a long time. I've seen him play one elite game in my time, and it was against my Bombers in 2020. This bloke just come out of nowhere, carved it up, and hasn't been the same.
That was the game. That was an awesome game. He had 28 disposals in that game. That was the game. I'll tell you what, that was the game that Adam Sard got a 50-meter penalty for you guys, and then he kicked it to, I don't know who, it was a Spud. It was one of your key forwards, and then he kicked it, and he came off Liam Jones's head and went through for a point, and we won by a point that game. That was
we had a goal after the siren too. I can't even remember.
What was his name? It was some random key forward of yours. It's like James Stewart or someone, or it was someone like that. But
I genuinely can't.
He didn't make the distance. The ball hit Liam Jones in the head, falconed him, and then he went through for. Sam Doherty scored 185 Supercoach points that game. It was a brilliant game. But before we get into the mailbag, very quickly, we're just going to touch on DPP. Just a couple of DPP updates. Nick Dacos has played 40% of time in the midfield now for the season. He's a lock for mid-defense for DPP. Jack Sinclair, he has played 35% midfield time. So if he plays 35% or more midfield time this week, he will be a defensive mid as well. But I guess the two big ones that have sort of just been floating around Supercoach circles all year. Sam Walsh, he's played 35% forward time. So again, he needs to have at least 35% forward time this week to gain that DPP. Once bitten, twice shy. Hopefully for the owners out there, or any prospective owners, you guys can get that forward DPP. And Spills, you and DR were both Max Gawn owners. I know you aren't anymore. DR is. Max Gawn has played 34% time forward. So he needs about 37 or so % time forward to get that forward DPP. So that will be really interesting. I'm just having a look here. Is there any other relevant ones? Jaden Short. Jaden Short has played 35% midfield, and because he's not playing this week because he's injured, he will be a defensive mid come this time next week. And also Sam Doherty has played 42% time midfield as well, and so this time next week he will also be a defensive midfielder. So that's the DPP update. Fair few relevant ones. at the start of the season, I wasn't sure whether we'd have Nick Dacos, Sam Doherty, and Jack Sinclair's midfielders, but here we are. And with that, Spills, I reckon we get onto the mailbag.
Absolutely, mate. We'll see what people have to say. I don't think there'd be a whole lot to sort of discuss. My views have dropped down a lot. Definitely Twitter hasn't been that hectic, so we'll see what we got here.
Elon Musk has decided to put a tweet, like a maximum number of tweets he can look at. It was not exactly the brightest thing, but I guess we won't complain too much about the boss of Twitter, because we got some questions here. We'll start
doing great things.
That's exactly it. We'll
start to him if he's watching.
Well, the reason why so many people are watching is he's clearly the one he's clearly watching. He's increasing our viewership. That's exactly it, isn't it? All right, let's have a look at this question from DSE then. So he's given us two options. So option A, trade Marshall to Mills this week and upgrade Day, Sheasel, or Zeeble to Sicily next week with the cash. Or option B, bring in Clary this week or next week via Briggs. 6 trades left before trade. So what this means, I reckon, is he's going to have 4 trades after this week, and 1 Primo off full team. Cool. So I'm struggling to see here whether 1 Primo off full team is after these trades, because Marshall to Mills is a sideways, and then Day, Shees, or Siebel to Sicily is also sideways. Well, let's hypothetically say, Spills, would you rather have Mills and Sicily, or would you rather Mills, Sicily, and Briggs, or Clary, Marshall, and Day, Sheasel, or Zeeble types? Like, which way would you? Well, main question is, let's start with this: would you rather have Clary or Briggs? Clary or Sicily?
It's just an interesting one. The obvious answer is Clary, but in the back half of the season, I'm gonna say Sicily. And he's got St Kilda again coming up, so 100% Sicily. He'll be fit. He'll be hungry. Low break even. A super pod. They're both gonna be pods when they return. But over the whole season, Clary. Over the second half of the season, Sicily. So. Yeah, I haven't held him for no reason. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, cool. So, well, I guess the second part of this question then is, would you rather trade Marshall or Briggs? Unbiasedly, because I know you own Briggs and Marshall, so it's
I've got them both,
perfect.
Mate, yeah.
So
yeah,
who would you rather trade? Yeah.
Definitely probably Briggs, simply because, well, he did get towed up on the weekend by the Gorney combo. Terrible conditions. Was looking like a good score.
I thought he was playing quite well until he got stuck on the bench.
Yeah, exactly right. I think he got scaled down. I could have swore he hit the ton and then got...
He was on 97 at 3/4 time and he ended up with 86.
Yeah,
87.
so on that, yeah, I don't know, because Briggs is doing such great things, but Jonathan, is it sustainable? I mean... Shorty discussed on his review last week. It just seems too good to be true that he's a genuine uber premium ruckman, just coming on at mid 300k, and then just being a viable R2. Where look, Ryan Marshall, he's so highly owned. I think you can just leave him there and not worry. I mean,
it's annoying with Marshall.
It hasn't been.
He's annoying because he should have gone huge against West Coast. If you get 26 disposals against West Coast, that's a 140 game gone begging. But he just started poorly, and then it's just.
Well, in so many teams, it doesn't really matter. Like as long as you leave him out in captaincy, there would have been the odd team that VC'd Bont and went, nah, not for me, and then rolled the dice on Rowan, which is a good move, but you're not really. Getting up there. So look, I think Marshall, it's tough because Briggs has probably been the better pick, but I think Marshall's almost safer just because of the ownership, and I think he's second for total points. So
I think we're both on the consensus DSE that option B, bringing Clary for Briggs, is the way to go. So all the best there. We'll go to Causa next. We've met the great man Causa here. He's asked order Libba, Chera, Neil, or Track this week. Would love a good pod. He's ranked 8.5k and would love our opinions. Well, firstly, can I just mention that, Spills, you remember this, Adam Chera, who was his number one hype man in preseason?
You, was it?
It was me.
Because you're not biased or anything, but you were definitely.
We were doing the Carlton team preview, and I was saying that Adam Chera is going to break out. Like,
that was a big rut for you. That was like your breakout video.
That
got you on the spectrum. That started this whole thing. So we don't forget that. Like we look back at that podcast and the Sarge chat as well, which looked like a good selection, but
it was looking like an awesome selection until he
decided. It was early, but then he just burnt the shit out of us. Yeah, look.
But I tell you, you're going.
I heard it was on Fantasy Take TV. I heard it last week. Yeah. I can't specifically remember the stat. I think he's the highest. They did a quiz. I think he's the highest scorer in the lowest ownership.
Yes, so, that's right. He's got the highest average in like the highest average below 1% ownership or something like that.
If Corns looking for a pod, that'd be.
That is, well, I'll tell you what. He had a 3-game stretch between round 6 and 8 of 144, 134, and 132. And now he's on a current stretch of 129, 132, 127, 130. And coming up against his old side, Fremantle, who scored 130 against at Optus in the same sort of game last year. He is an awesome player. And I'll tell you what, if you want a goal kick in midfielder, that's not exactly Christian Petrarca just yet. He's the pod. He is a pod. He's 630k. If you got in on him at 560 odd k, you're laughing right now. He's owned by 3% Spills, so he's definitely a big pod.
Super pod.
If you want, I think Lockie Neal without Josh Dunkley should go absolute gangbusters
against West Coast. If it's for this, like order one of these players this week, I genuinely think Neal by the length of Flames is straight. Let's be honest. I mean. Easily, just because of the matchup, the out of Dunkley. Look at Neil, had a great year, don't get me wrong, but look at Neil last year without Dunkley, just unbelievable. So, it's a pretty easy one for me, mate. The easiest VC of your life too. So,
and we'll actually talk about captains a bit later, Spills, but Lockie Neal is looking very much as a captain pick. But this is hard because, all right, if we were going by pod rate, and I think you just go in reverse ownership percentage. Except I probably put like Chera, it's ridiculous to say, but if you really want a pod, you're not going to really gain rank with bringing in Lockie Neal because Lockie Neal is owned by, I'll tell you how many. Lockie Neal is owned by 93.2% of the top 1%. And he's owned
But if you don't own him and he goes nuts, you're not going to.
You're really banking on him. Yeah, you're banking on him performing poorly.
And you don't want to do that against West Coast.
Definitely not. Petrarca is still a relative pod in the sort of top 1%. Or top 5% is owned by 36.3%. And top 1% is owned by 45%. So the cement bag, he's going to new heights really into, with the stretch coming up, I probably have track 1, even with regards to ownership. Chera and Libba are really tired for me because I think Libba with his Marvel run, he plays West Coast he plays West Coast in the second to last round of the season, which for many is the Supercoach final. He's owned by 10% overall. And if I just get the number up here, Tom Liberatore, Tom Liberatore is owned by 20% off the top 1%. So again, a big pod there. So, Cause, I don't think you can go wrong here. Spills, if you were to rank these 1 to 4, given causes and
I was just going to say, Neil, Track, Libba, Chera.
Even with the pods?
Yeah, because you just sometimes a pod isn't as good as an antipod. You'd rather just own Neil. I'd hate to back against Neil. I mean, you're looking for a pod. Chera might go well, but you're gaining nothing when Neil's going bananas and he's not in your team, but he's in or 90% of the top 5% or whatever you said. So yeah, I think you don't want to go against the tide, I guess is what I'm saying. But it's another discussion.
That's a good discussion. I reckon I agree with you there. Like Cherry is the perfect pick if you want a pod causer and you want to bet against the other three there, but I don't think you can really go wrong. Neil this week is sort of a mint VC option.
It's more so if you own everyone else. And you've got a Jack Steele or something, a bit of coin, and a lot of trades, and he's the only real problem. That's when you go, oh, I'm looking for a pod at M8 because I can afford it. But when you don't have a highly owned premium, I think you got to prioritize those ones first.
That's a good call there, mate. Kata. So the great man Kata's asked, and this is the exact scenario. So we didn't actually see this question, Kata, but this is exactly what we talked about before. Dunkley News, 1 to 2 week calf, Lions playing Friday, and he's got a higher break even. He has 7 trade spills, and he's considering trading Dunkley to Mills, like you said. And then with Sheldrick Johnson types making money, he's going to trade one of those two, or maybe both, I'm not sure, back to Dunkley in round 19 and getting him back cheaper. Do you approve of this?
No, because he's got the best.
He playing with fire?
He's playing with fire because he's got the best cover. I mean, look at the stat you just brought up, 98 or whatever. I mean, percent at the top.
Everyone has him.
Everyone has him. So it's not so much Dunkley is irrelevant. He doesn't matter because he's going to be everyone's bench. What we said before, the separate those. If you have Sheldrick and Johnson, you're going to smash anyone, and that is the best cover for the rest of the year. I mean, I have Dunkley and Windhager. I can't compete with Sheldrick and Johnson. So loophole those two bad boys and go off. That's my advice.
Just quickly, one thing that I'm seeing with Kata's team right now is he doesn't have an F6. So he's not at full premium. So trading out Dunkley to another premium would mean that Kata would have Sheldrick as his 22nd player, not as his cover for Dunkley. So maybe in this case, it makes a bit more sense. But if you were full premium, I wouldn't be sidewaysing a Dunkley to Mills and then using your rookie and then ending up with Mills as your 23rd. What do you reckon there, Spills? Do you reckon, given that, it makes a bit more sense?
Well, he's got Matty J, so that's good cover too. I mean, just back him in. It's only short term, and if you didn't have Matty J and you had like no one else but Chesser or someone else, that's probably dead. I'm not really sure. I can't think off the top of my head, but that's when you could probably argue the case. Yeah, you might have to trade him if you're going to really bleed at that last position. But considering that he's got Sheldrick and Johnson, I mean, you could do so much worse, I think.
What about this, Spills? Now, I'm just playing Kata with a couple of scenarios here, but what about if you trade Dunkley to Oliver, bank that 30-odd K, so that takes you down to 5 trades, and then you use Sheldrick and Johnson to bring Dunkley back in. So that you'd end up...
That works too, yeah.
And you should have enough money to facilitate that, given Dunkley's high break-even means once he comes back, you probably miss a week, but then then the other two should have appreciated to their highest max price to then trade them out again.
Well, if you can get that done with Johnson and someone else, I think Sheldrick's he's a special player, and I think with the DPP as well and the run of early games that the Swans have, I think he's the best cover for the rest of the year. If I had Sheldrick from the get-go, I wouldn't want to trade him out. So I don't know. I don't think it's worth getting rid of him to get Dunkley back in your team. Seems like a bit of a waste.
It's hard to say right now because Sheldrick might just be perfect for him.
Yeah. Is it sustainable?
You get the time to assess, don't you? You get another couple of weeks to see, okay, is it worth trading Sheldrick out? Or is he my cover long-term? So, Kata, hopefully that answers your question. The other thing that I really want to mention is Jared Witts in your team, mate, is a massive pod as a captaincy option this week. He should towel up Port Adelaide's ruck division, which is, to say the least, is not very good. All right, James Doherty, great man. We love having a chat. he's a bit pissed off about England getting a bit robbed in the cricket, but
Oh, come on, give me a
that's all
spell.
good. Come off it. Fellas, off topic slightly. How do you feel about a substitute rule? If your player's in the first quarter, you could then use the emergency score for the position for the remaining 3 quarters only. Oh, but he got the Jezza -3. I copped the Mills. I mean, what do you mean for the other 3 quarters? Does that mean that if your emergency score in the first quarter doesn't count, it's only the other 3 quarters that they play?
Just gun out of the window drive by. Like some cops Mills for also. She's been following your stuff for a while. It's fair to say.
Nah, James is a good bloke. I think Supercoach is just a game where luck is involved, and you just gotta.
Yeah.
You don't need to be rewarded for taking on an injured player. Like, I knew the risk when I went with Mills. You didn't know the risk when you went with Jezza, but it's such a weighed up game, and you just got to take calculated risks. There's so much unfortunate stuff that happens. Like, think about the guys that are getting suspended for dangerous tackles and stuff. It's so much is out of our control. So I think we just got to let that slide, don't we, Spills?
Yeah, I think the substitute rule's shocking and just have 5 on your bench. I mean, and case closed. But very stiff with the cricket as well. Controversial with Bairstow. That has been a meme if I've ever seen one. I've been watching a bit of the test as well. So yeah, very, very unlucky.
Good. All right, we'll go to Travis, another avid follower of the podcast. Thanks for always tuning in, mate. Hey, DR, news on Dunks missing. Do I trade Fife to Mills or Zorko?
Zorko?
Don't
what do you
trade
mean?
in Zorko.
Go Mills, mate.
Go to Mills. I think that's easy. We don't need a chat on Zorko, do we?
No, it depends if he's not cutting people's grass, then maybe. But
we talked about Luke Shuey off the podcast, Bills, but I reckon Dane Zorko's probably got half a tendon left as Shuey's got one left off his hammy.
Oh, yeah, we're saying off air that there might be a bit of a scare coming for Neil, a bit of a tag, but we'll have a bit of a laugh saying that if Shuey puts a bit of attention into him, Neil's going to fend him off and break his last tendon, and Shuey's going to be cooked. A bit of a stab at the injury list of the West Coast.
But I must say, Luke Shuey, what an inspirational leader. That game against St Kilda, that was one of the way that he turned up and brought his teammates along with him. Great kudos there. So thankfully you didn't do your hammy there, but hopefully you have a good rest of the season, mate.
He turned up in that smashing too, as well.
Yeah, that's it. He played really well. Bit of a different question. We've got a draft league and wondering how you'd rank big players' run home in finals. Could be some nice analysis. I think Laird averaged more than Track here, but Track has a softer fixture. Yep. So we've been saying that Track has got with that sort of soft track bully mentality where just average is huge.
He's the one you want, Janeth. Hands down.
I know that is it. So I guess that's quite straightforward in terms of like soft fixtures in round 23, round 24, sort of when you sort of really want for Supercoach finals. I think
Sicily's got St Kilda in that somewhere in there, I think.
Yeah, so round 20, Hawks of St Kilda. Round 22,
Pencil VC for that one.
Round 22 and 23, Bulldogs mids, get on them because Bulldogs play Hawthorn round 22 at UTAS, and then Bulldogs play West Coast at Marvel in round 23. So you want to have the Bont, Libba, those types, even English in round 23 there. If we're looking just at round 24 fixtures, anything that sort of stands out, Adelaide against West Coast. So I think Laird should go off again. Dawson didn't do so well. Gold Coast West North Melbourne in Tasmania. So looking at your Took, Anderson, Rowell types. Is there sort of anything else that stands out in these last couple of weeks?
I would put a whole lot of attention into the fixture either. I mean, look what Laird did to West Coast.
That's it.
What was that? 110.
Yeah, but if you have a look at it, it's so hard to look at the fixture just so simply because Laird killed West Coast, but he only scored 83 against North.
Oh, sorry, no, it wasn't. Yeah, sorry, it wasn't Laird. It was Dawson that went pretty ordinary against West Coast.
They swapped.
And Laird that
It feels
smashed
like
him.
that's exactly so.
So
It's a
you
toss of the
don't
coin,
know.
mate.
You
But-
don't have that clarity, but
But I
Petrarca
like
is the
I
obvious.
like the thinking here is that you want to forecast 4 finals, especially in draft leagues. So I'd personally be going Petrarca, Oliver type, well, Melbourne mids, especially Petrarca, Bulldogs mids for sure, and then Adelaide in general as a team when they play West Coast in the final round. Those are some pretty good matchups there, mate. So hopefully that helps you out. Second to last question then, Spills. So we've got a question here from James as well. Hey legends, how are we all going? We're doing well. Thanks for checking in, Spill. Thanks for checking in, James. Spills, I'm going to ask you, just would love some discussion around dunks, complete trade, 2 trades left. Think I'm going to hold and swing Sheldrick on field. I don't think we have much to discuss here. This is
easy
almost
done.
ideal,
Don't trade him. Don't
2
trade
trades
him.
left.
Two
You don't have enough
2
trades
trades
to
left.
make it.
You can't. You're lucky
Big-
you've got Sheldrick cover. I mean, I've got 2 trades left, one after this week. Bit of money in the bank, I'll admit, but I don't have Sheldrick. So I've got Windhager. That's it, and that is good enough for me. So yeah, roll the dice on Sheldrick, and yeah, good luck to you,
Agreed,
legend. I think you'll be fine.
That's it, mate. And then the final question here. So Ryan's asked us, g'day Ryan, who is the better pick from this point onwards for the rest of the year? Sean Darcy or Kieran Briggs? Brigger.
Kizar.
Is it get a bit of Kizania?
Brigos.
I've
Briggs
got.
for sure.
Are you sure?
No.
I don't think you are.
I just love the
like-
bloke.
I like Sean Darcy. He's
I
like
got rid of Sean Darcy for Briggs.
or Briggs, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what?
Haven't-
If Tom
have not looked
DeConning
back.
and Pitternet don't play this week, Sean Darcy going to absolutely towel up our Carlton rucks because we got Lewis Young and Jack Silvani rucking at the moment. Tom DeConning and Pitternet, they both got knee injuries, but they're both tests to play this weekend, mate. But Ryan, honestly, I might just decide it based on that matchup because there's not much split in them. They're both very similar in the way they play. They're both tap ruckman. They work well around the ground. Briggs did look a bit sort of cooked on the weekend. Might be he just ran out a bit of stamina there at the end, but he's just such a good player. Same goes to Sean Darcy. He can hit the scoreboard as well. Both of them can. So you can't really go wrong. But I mean, if Pitternet and DeConning don't play this weekend, then I'll definitely be holding Sean Darcy because he should be in for a big game against Carlton and us on the weekend. Great spills. Anything you want to add?
Talk about reasonably priced. Yeah. When we talk about reasonably priced ruckman, I mean, he's so cheap. $4.15, I think. So very ideal, Sean Darcy. I don't mind it. But yeah, Briggs seems safer because Darcy just burns me every year. I mean, there's always something. Always. Where Briggs he's earned my trust and hopefully he doesn't break it. Touch wood. But yeah.
So we're a bit split there. But thank you for the question, Anna. Just one final one to finish off. Just made it in. Hey guys, love the pod. Mills or Walsh for M8? Don't want to go back to Mills. I've already owned him for his 4, but the price is maybe too good to pass up. Sam Walsh, I reckon. Just pay up for him. He could be DPP this week. It's
you would
it's really
say that
interesting.
because you're Carlton form 3
Spills,
and
Spills,
Mills
all right.
done you dirty.
All right, trust me here. Do you want Callum Mills at M8? This isn't M9. This isn't your emergency.
Yeah,
this
I know.
He's on your field every week.
Yeah, I know. It is easy for
At
me
least
to
I know
say.
Sam
'cause I
Walsh
can just
won't
bring him.
hopefully get injured for 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not gonna
That's a
happen
week.
again,
That's a
is it?
season ruiner, man. Like I just got over it. I've just got over it. Like imagine bringing
And
in
now
someone.
he's going
Right?
to break even at 44.
That's
just
what I mean. Like you can't win,
Miracle.
but you can't have someone score 4 on your field. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, look, I think for value, I think Mills for sure. If you're looking at future plans, but if you're just looking for an
That's
M8 to finish your team, Welsh should
Yeah.
go of the week.
That's it. Because if
I
you
like
don't
Mills.
have any use for the money, unless it's like you're holding money over for an injury trade. There's no real use in going.
No
Mills
need
over
for it. Yeah,
Mills and
just
Walt.
backing
pay
the
up.
backing the best available.
That's exactly it. Well, Spills, we had quite a productive mailbag segment there. I guess
Great
to sort of
start.
just bookend, great chat. Honestly, it was good chatting, picking your brain there. We do miss DR, obviously our leader on this podcast. He's the tried and tested absolute legend in the Supercoach community. But I guess we'll just you've already mentioned your trade Spills early in the podcast, but we'll just go to captains now. I'll start off with mine. So I'm looking at VC and Lockie Neal. Just want to really screen his score, however big it is. I just want to know what it is before falling back on someone if need be. So without Dunkley, it should be pretty good. Those that have held Ashcroft, if Ashcroft is your cover for Dunkley, I reckon he goes right to the top of the list because no Dunkley at the Gabba against West Coast. That's like a prime Ashcroft game. We could see the breakout of all breakout games for him. But yes, captains, Lockie Neal. At the moment, I'm thinking, so just some data on Lockie Neal to sort of substantiate that. He averages 134 last three, 141 in his last three against West Coast, and 138 in his last three again at the Gabba. And then to fall back on, I'm either looking at Zach Merritt or Rory Laird. The reason behind Rory Laird is something that Klopp Supercoach on Twitter saw is that whenever Laird has a sub-100 game, he always follows it up with a big game. And his last three against Essendon, 121 average, and last three at Marvel is 130 average. Merritt, similarly, plays really well against Adelaide, so 133 average in his last three there. And he's averaging 121 in his last three games of Marvel. So both of them seem like safe fallback options. He should have gone massive against North, but then he got tagged after that first quarter. Spills, where are you looking for your VC and CMA? Are you following where I've got, or are you looking a bit different?
Well, a wise man once told me, DR, great minds think alike. And yeah, I'm gonna replicate exactly that. And yeah, VC, I'd like to see what Neil does. I'd hate to have what you don't want to happen is Bonaparty went 114 as consistent as ever, but you don't want your VC going 120 because that's a dance with your sister awkward type situation.
Dance with your sister awkward type.
I've heard that from Shorty. I love that. That's unreal. So he does say that a bit. So you don't want that VC. Do you bank it? What is going to happen with Neil? I feel like it's going to be one way or the other. We're either going to get 105 or 160. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. It's unknown. I'd rather just VC. You've always said VC who you want to captain. I think you just do that. You VC who you want to captain, fall back on someone else. There's not me to fall back on. Merritt is probably my favourite, but is there a Ben Keys tag coming his way? I don't really know. I doubt it. But then again, Petrarca's a good one as well against St Kilda. But then you also toss up the argument St Kilda are the hardest midfield to score against as well. Second hardest, sorry. So that's another one as well that you have to consider. I hope we don't need to use the captain. I reckon I'm going to go the game on Sunday, I think. So I think Merritt for me, just because it'll be more enjoyable. And if he goes off, I'd love to be there cheering him on behind the goals. But look, hopefully we don't need to do that and we can just bank whatever Neil serves.
Yeah, so
me, mate.
Oh, that's it. Perfect stuff there. And just as a community, if you have Jared Witts, he has to be in your conversation for VCC because, as we've said multiple times this podcast, that matchup against Port Adelaide is looking really good, and Tuke Miller should be back to help with that midfield brigade as well. Well, Spills, that brings us to the end of season 3, episode 14 of the Swordplay podcast. We should have DR back on next week. We'll give him back the baton of going on about his rant. Hope everyone in the community has enjoyed this podcast, and as always, thank you so much for the support that you provide, and we really do appreciate it. That's sort of what keeps us going. As the season winds along, we'll make sure to increase the engagement, even in podcasts like this in the coming weeks. But Spills, I guess we'll leave it there. We'll give our best of luck to the community. Hope you all make your decisions, and as always, follow your gut. You'll definitely see that you'll have some good a good harvest, some good fruit coming out of that. So as always, follow your gut.
Heard you, Janet.
I know. I'm just making stuff up on the spot at this moment, but yeah, follow your gut. You will be rewarded.
Great audience, very good audience. We'll have merch before you know it.
We will see you guys all next week.
See you, everyone.